Welcome to the She Will Shine podcast, where we bring you the real stories of female business owners. My name is Danielle Price and I'm the founder of She Will Shine, a supportive business network for women. It's time to give a voice to women in business and discover their journey.
Hi, and welcome to the She Will Shine podcast. Today we have the lovely Amela Kmetas with us. How are you, Amela?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being here. Amela is a Chartered Accountant and MBA graduate with over 10 years of experience in tax and small business advisory services. She is the director of 412 Accountants, a chartered accounting firm that was founded to empower business owners to understand their numbers and gain clarity. With a purpose to create something more than just tax compliance, an inclusive service offering set out to create strategic accounting and tax solutions. So, Amela, I'm going to start by asking, have you always loved numbers?
Not really. I think from a young age, when you've had to learn how to budget, you kind of pay attention to it. And as you learn a bit more about it, you realize it's not as hard as it turned out to be. I think I was saying before, high school accounting wasn't sort of my subject that I was enthusiastic about. So I'd always take that easy road to it and sometimes not attend classes. But then when my teacher kind of said, hey, if you don't attend classes, this is not going to end well. I was like, all right, I'll give it a go. And yeah, it was interesting starting with the debits and credits foundations. And I was like, okay, I can get the swing of this. And then it kind of just went on from there.
Yeah. And so did you love, because you said, the practical aspects of the budgets, is that what you loved about it when you got into it, the practical aspect?
Yeah, I think it's just seeing what you're doing and what result you can have from it, and how you can incorporate that into your life. Like it was always like, right, with my first job, it's like $5 an hour. What can I do if I work 3 hours today or tonight? What can I do with $15? Of course, it was like, okay, I can go to playtime, I can buy Maccas, I can leave some money aside, which means because I have something on for next week. And then week by week, that's just how I functioned.
Yep. And so did you have when you finished high school, was it like, yep, I'm going into accounting? Was that quite a clear path?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Interesting that, because I never kind of explored anything else right after high school. It was probably after uni where I was like, did I want to do accounting? And it was like, okay, it's like, well, I've invested this much, should I keep going? So I didn't go down that traditional path of hopping into a CA, CPA straight away. It was figuring out and deciding, okay, do I want to do accounting? And then, yeah, it was kind of working in the field and seeing if I liked it, whether I wanted to go into corporate or do small business. And, over time I liked interacting with clients, small teams. And then I was like, all right, let's commit to this a bit further.
Yeah. And did you always think that you'd run your own business at the end of it or not?
I always felt like this wasn't going to be it for me. I couldn't see myself 10 or 15 or 20 years down the track and having to have the same process, the same kind of role, or not role, but just showing up to the same type of work, whether that's in a different accounting firm. But hey, look what happened in the last 2 years. You didn't even have to show up to the office these days. It felt like it was just a matter of time. I've always had two jobs. Even in retail, when I just started working, I've had two jobs. And then with accounting, it was something that I allowed myself time to see if I wanted to work for myself, rather than I have to work for myself.
Try before you buy kind of thing.
Yeah. And sometimes I find with myself, it's in my head, I'm thinking about it, and then I'll know when I'm ready when I wake up one morning and I say, that's it, this is the day. And that's what happened. And then after saying this is the day, it's that process of actioning it. And as we know, if you leave it too long, it's like, well, did you really want it? So you put the wheels in motion for it to happen.
Yeah. And you weren't born here in Australia. Would you like to share a little bit about your background?
Yeah. I was born in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I am from the second part, the Herzegovina part, which is sort of up north and down south. So I'm down from down south. I lived there till I was about 7 with my family, and life was there as we know it. The war happened in 1992, so the Balkan War. And we had, my dad got injured in the war, so along with, other people. And it came to the point of where he needed care. And at that time, Saudi Arabia was taking in refugees and injured soldiers and civilians, I guess. And we were sent there as part of, it wasn't just us, but there were other families there as well, as part of the rehabilitation and care. And, for a 7-year-old, it's great, because getting out of this place that you're not really happy with. So we stayed there for about 3 years, and we lived in a compound area where it's within the hospital. So everything is compounded from a point of expats, and whether that'll be it was predominantly, from what I remember, it was predominantly from the US. And in that 3-year period, it was the recovery for rehabilitation, and there was no commitment to stay there. And actually, you weren't allowed, really. You were there just for a humanitarian view. And then you were kind of told when you were fit and recovered, either go back to where you came from, or, we'll help you find somewhere to live. Obviously during the war, a lot of people got displaced, and my dad's sister was already living in Australia, who came here because of their aunt who migrated, I think maybe 50s or 60s.
Okay, yeah.
So we had the option to come here or to go to the US. And for me, as a 10-year-old kid, the US, all I knew was bloody Disneyland, right? It's the reason the US exists is because of Disneyland and Mickey Mouse. We never went to the US, which was kind of a tantrum from my end, but in hindsight, it was probably a good thing.
Did you know English at that stage?
Yes, so in Saudi Arabia. So we went to an international school within that compound area. And that school was designed for the expats who were at the hospital, the surgeons, the staffing, who had families there as well. And that's where I learned English. And I remember trying to learn English and reading one book and thinking, what is this? And then waking up one morning and going, oh my God, I understand what people are saying. Well, not one morning, but over time. But it was that point where it was I can understand what they're saying. So when we came here, and I went to primary school, kids were looking at me like I didn't understand English. And of course, they'll speak loudly. And I'd be like, yeah, I understand you. And they're like, oh, you understand English? I'm like, yeah. The only difference was it was US English, American. So the accents and words that you use. But over time, you kind of lose that a bit. And then arrived here and kind of lived life.
Did you find it easy to settle in when you came here?
No, not at all. I guess we were fortunate to have some family here, which was, you're forever thankful for that. But, as we settled in as our own family, we lived with my aunt and uncle for a few months, which, again, as a kid, it isn't as bad as if you were an 18-year-old or as a parent.
It's more of an adventure as a kid, I guess.
Yeah, because you're with your cousin and things are fun. But, over time, it's okay, you want to do what you do as a family.
And maybe it would have been harder for your parents than it would have been.
I can't imagine what that was like. And then it was because my dad wasn't able to drive around. We didn't really have a car. And my mum was his carer, so she didn't work. So it was kind of struggling to kind of find that in between in community as well, attending events, engagement as a kid. And I think with school as well, it was, you kind of got what you were offered. if you were offered something, like as in, do you want to attend an activity? But it's like, I can't, so I'm going to have to say no.
Yeah.
Or things like that. But everything was always local, which was really nice. And I think over time, because you're still processing a lot of stuff of having to shuffle around, of having to relocate so many times, like even arriving here, like relocating a few times just to find your home was, over time challenging, but you get used to not being rooted somewhere.
Yeah. Does that mean you kind of have you don't have that attachment to things? Do you know what I mean? Like, I've grown up in the same area my whole life. I actually live in the house now that I grew up in. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like very sentimental about things like that. Is it different because of the way it's been for you?
It was,
Yeah.
Everything was just so easy to kind of detach and be like, yep, let's move on, or like, yeah, that's fine. But now we've been living in Australia for 26 years. Like, when you say 26 years, it's a long time, because even when we arrived here, when, you speak to somebody and they say, oh, we've been living here for 20 years, you're like, whoa, that's long. That's me now. Now it's like, fine. But up until maybe like 10 years ago, it was like, well, where am I? Where do I belong? How do I kind of set my roots, and so forth? Like, I'd still be open to the idea of picking up and relocating my life overseas. It doesn't have to be back home, but it can be anywhere. And I wouldn't have an issue with that. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Do you think that kind of finding your place as a young person made it easier or harder in the decision to start your own business and, put that kind of your own future in your own hands? An easy decision?
It was it was a less scary decision, rather than easy decision. I think because for a long time, my future was in my hands, like from a point of, if you want something, you've got to do it yourself. But equally, in saying that, arriving to Australia, it wasn't on our own. You're aware of that, but it's like, yeah, we've helped you this far. The rest is up to you. So you can't kind of just be like, oh, but I didn't know, or I can't, like, you didn't help me, or, someone needs to help me. It's like, okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Now what can I do? Yeah. And there was always that mentality, rather than like easy versus scary, if that makes sense.
Yes, I know what you mean. It's like, you've been given this opportunity, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. So it's kind of like, the fear is like aside, it's just like, is the timing right for it? Like I always felt like if the timing was right for it, and it was always like I don't want to say that I don't like authority. I mean, I do follow the law, but I mean from a point of, you're going to tell me what time I need to leave. I don't know.
I never liked that personally.
Yeah, it's like, fair enough, you respect what's required, but okay, and sometimes you do put up with it, because you're trying to figure out things for yourself. But long-term wise, like, I'm thinking, at whatever age that might be, or down the future, it's like, I don't want to follow that. I don't want to follow a time clock that's saying, yep, it's 5 to 5, you can leave at 5, or you're like, yep, you can go, or something like that. Again, but we're seeing now that's changing a lot as well. So
yeah, over the last few years, definitely.
Yeah,
changing.
Definitely.
It's interesting. I was always, I actually got called once a clock watcher, because when I was working for someone else, I would work my ass off during 9 to 5, but at 5 o'clock, I'm out the door. And people, I was working in agencies where the culture was, you hang around, you have a drink, this, that, do a bit more work because you slacked off during the day and you had a long lunch. Like, I'm not into that. I just want to get in, do my work, and then see you later.
Yeah. See, I like a bit of both. I do like, hanging around a bit. And I do like sort of that aspect of, I need to leave at 5 and I'm going to leave 10 minutes early because I was 20 minutes early today to beat the traffic or to make an appointment or whatever it is. It's easy to forget that someone comes in 4 days a week, an hour early, but it's super easy to remember that they left 10 minutes on the Friday. Yeah. And it's that kind of culture. Yeah.
So how have you've got a few employees now within your accountant firm. How have you kind of created a culture that's in alignment with what you've just been saying?
Yeah, I think about that every day, and I think about it like, is this the right thing? Is this the right way? Is this the correct environment that we're creating? It's just showing respect, and it's hearing the other person of, you know, I think it was maybe like a few months ago, somebody was moving apartments and they were saying, I need to do this. And it's like, yeah, go home and do it. It's having that understanding of, what if that was me, you know, that level of empathy as well, but not too much of it to be like, oh, okay, well, what can I do about it? Yeah. It's showing that enough empathy and understanding of, you know, I would like that as well. I would like to have that ease of, hey, listen, I have the electrician coming in at 3 p.m. That's the only time they can come in. Can I work from home? Or, you know, I'll be running around. Yeah, okay, just make sure that's done because they're asking for it. Or, you know, is everything else up to date? Because that person that's there, you know, overtime or whatnot. And from day one, I've always said, I don't expect you to be here till 6 o'clock every night. Yes, it happens from time to time, but it's not every night, because, you know, every night, one, you've got too much work on. You're going to burn out. Shit's going to hit the fan between, like, internally, or I haven't taught you enough, or you're slack. It's three of those things, and you got to assess which one it is. It was funny because the other night I was talking to somebody who is consulting at one of the big 4 companies, and they were saying how it's every day, you know, there's always a meeting at 4:30 p.m. I go, time stealers. That's all that is. It's a time stealer of your time when you should be checking out at 5 or whatever time it is. Okay, it's smart, but it's wrong, you know?
Yeah, that's right. And that's the thing, you start building resentment. You know, working in an organisation that's like that, you build resentment, and over time, what sort of an employee are you going to be? Not a great one.
Yeah.
So rather than having loyalty and understanding between employee and employer, they're going the opposite.
Yeah, and short term, yeah, sure, a few months or even up to a year, but then it's like, I don't want to be here anymore. And, you know, you check out, but you're still there, and it's like, what quality of staff commitment and sort of environment are you creating? I would say
that's right.
Yeah.
Recently, you finished more study. Would you like to share a bit more about that? Because you said, I don't know if it was before we started talking, you said you had 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Always had 2 jobs growing up. So not only did you run your business, you went back to do more study at the same time. Can you share that experience?
Oh, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was only like 4 months ago. I always wanted to do something further. Like, so after university, I didn't go down the path of automatically hopping into chartered accounting or CPA. I gave it some time and I did the chartered accounting, and I thought, what now, kind of thing. And I was like, oh, there's always room to study. And I stayed on an MBA for a while. It would have been about 18 months while I was thinking about it. And I went to an information session a year before I enrolled, and I loved everything that I heard. But then I was like, oh, I don't feel like I belong here. It's a bit, you know, too much for me. And then I decided I was going to apply. And then in the application process, it was like, write us a cover page of why we should accept you. And I was like, what? Okay, cool. And I was like, oh, this is a bit uncomfortable. So after doing that, it was like, oh, I got accepted. Shit, this is serious. Do I accept the offer? Now, it doesn't mean I have to accept it. I can still say no. And the program was 2 years part-time or 1 year full-time. And full-time was out of the option, obviously. And I was like, part-time, I was like, look, if I finish it in 3 years, I'll be great. I'd be happy with that. So I started in January 2020, which life before we knew it was just story. And I remember starting orientation day was the 2nd of January 2020. we had a event on that evening all the way up in the Dandenongs, and I said to the professor sort of at the end, because usually towards the end it kind of fizzles out with just information, and it goes, look, if you need to be somewhere, you need to be somewhere, but you need to decide where you should be, you know. And I was like, whoa, this is, because it's a standard, right? Like you're setting a standard. And that kind of changed my thinking of, yeah, he's absolutely right. You know, like, do you commit 100%, 110% into this, or just kind of like float around? And that's when I told myself, I'm going to do this in 2 years. If this is doable in 2 years, I'm going to do it in 2 years. And that was like on the day of orientation.
And that was before you knew there was a pandemic on the way.
Yeah. Yep. Perhaps I wouldn't have finished it in 2 years without the pandemic, because the 5K radius and being at home, what else am I going to do except study? It was challenging in that. So term one, that we said there's 4 terms. Term one was in person, and term 2 kind of changed to online, which was kind of a bit conflicting from a point of enrolling this school to get that face-to-face engagement. And it's like, well, why am I doing this? Then I was like, don't steer away from what I told myself I'd like to achieve within that 2-year period. And we were fortunate that the school did create an environment where the online was inclusive. The challenges with that was, though, COVID hit, JobKeeper came in, and
and your business busier than ever before.
Yeah, and it was just kind of like, I need to do some studying. I need to study. And you know, what's that saying? You allow yourself 6 months to do something, it'll take you 6 months to do it. You allow yourself to cram 10 weeks of work in 2 weeks, you'll do it.
Yeah.
So there were kind of terms of that as well. There was a term of that. And I thought to myself, geez, if I can do this, I can just keep going. And that's what I did. You know, short-term sacrifices for the end result, which was finishing everything up in December and not having to worry about it, and being like, yeah, I did this. It taught me a lot about myself, about perseverance. You know, like any framework, if you can look it up online these days, you have that accessibility, but it was almost as if you take yourself, well, I felt like I took myself to a space where it was like the doubt of studying, working full-time, running your own business, and everything else that's happening in life kind of fizzles away when you see what you can achieve.
Yeah.
And yeah,
what's possible on the other side.
Yeah.
So were you obviously very proud of yourself for achieving it?
I was. It still hasn't sunk in. I did get my piece of paper that says,
I was going to ask, have you actually graduated yet?
Well, I have, but the party hasn't happened yet. So that's happening this year because of COVID and all of that. It was kind of like what I liked about it, the information session that I went to. The person that was presenting it was the one, like the professor was the one that I was like, whatever is coming out of your mouth, I'm like just absorbing it all into my ears, and it's just being like, cemented into
stored in there.
Yeah, like that's like permanent filing cabinet in there. And my first subject was with her husband at the university, and my last subject was with her. So I was like, this was meant to be. And yeah, it's sunk in, and I'm extremely proud of myself for that.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how it's the people, so that, you know, you being inspired by this professor is really what pushed you over the line.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's all about the people.
Yeah. And it's, you know, when you're in an environment or in a situation where you're uncomfortable or you're feeling kind of down or kind of putting that pressure on yourself, you know, it's having that listening sense within yourself. Is it the situation or is it the people that are around me? And chances are it's the people that are around you. And it's recognizing that they're sucking my energy out. You know? And vice versa, even for the other person, that might be a situation as well. And it's really listening to that and being like, you know what? Yeah, because I don't want to. That's a no, because I don't want to, not because something came up or I'm trying to make up something. I simply don't want to. But that takes time to get to that, right? And
yeah, that's right.
Experience to say that. So yeah,
and also, it's also like it takes time to listen to the little voice in your head that goes, no, I don't know, I don't think this is quite right for me, or whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
You know, because like, oh, on paper, everything looks, you know, people say, oh, on paper, everything looks great. But it's like, hang on a minute, but what do you have to actually have to do? Who do you have to, you know, interact with? What does it actually involve?
Yeah.
And I think it kind of takes a few years to, especially in business, to start trusting your own gut about things and decisions, and who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And with accounting, right? People, you have every right to change accountants every single year if you want, or anything really. But, you know, and I always ask myself, why, like when there's a potential new client or you sit down in that first meeting, yes, the primary objective is to see if you can service what they're after and what they require, and then that relationship building. But then it's also like, why are you changing accountants? You know, it can be that, and I often hear that they've scaled too much, you don't hear from them, or they're retiring, and that's fine. But, you know, over time, as you listen to that internal feeling, the gut, it's like, you know, are you asking for too much? And then it's like, will this become a little headache for me down the track?
Yeah.
You can avoid and you don't have to deal with. And that takes practice, right?
Yeah. Can I say, this is really interesting. I had to change accountants. This is years ago. I think this was my business prior to She'll Shine, which was similar sort of setup. But I had to change accountants. I think my accountant was moving. And in that time, you know, nothing was online. It was always face to face.
It moves,
like,
right?
Yeah, that's right. So I can't see him anymore. He's moved too far away. Anyway, but I went and saw another guy. There you go.
Yeah.
Ding, ding. And he didn't even ask me what my business did. And I'm like, I'm not a photographer. This was after my design business. I'm not a graphic designer. Like, I wasn't in a set industry, and he didn't ask me what my business entails. I'm like, what sort of relationship am I going to have with you if you don't know what I do?
Transactional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, see you later. I think I used him once because I was desperate to get my tax and things done, but that was it.
Yeah. And, you know, like sometimes you have, we all know this, we all have it in life. A person might leave or exit, or whichever one it is. And you feel a bit uncomfortable. It's like, how dare they, or whatever that feeling is. But then it's like, no, ask why they're leaving. And in business, it can become cutthroat and ruthless internally within yourself as well, because you look around you and, you know, there's accountants everywhere, there's networking events everywhere, and it's like, how do you do what you want to do? But then it's like, I stop and think, and I go, so many people in Australia, especially now that everything's online. Let's start with Victoria first. There's enough room for everyone. There really is. And yeah, it makes me feel a bit sad to think that everything is such a competition.
Yes.
Like with that, say with your previous accountant, it's like, where are they going? Why are they doing this? It's like, okay, let's find out why they left, number one. And two, if it's reasonable, fair enough. Or if there's been some huge dispute, it's like, well, is it Danielle? Is she asking for too much? Or is it the other accountant that isn't servicing what Danielle is after? And it's finding that in between and learning from it. And, you know, you can apply that to everything, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's it, because whatever negative may have happened, whatever instance, whatever experience you've had, there's always learning. Always a learning. Even, you know, something with your kids, whatever it may be, there's always an opportunity to learn from it, but also to develop. I always talk about the amount of self-development I've done as a business owner that I didn't even know was part of, like, it feels like it's part of the job, but it's like, no one told me that when I started my business.
No one tells you anything, right?
No.
They don't have to. And I guess you learn from your own experience. Just to go back to school, I got asked a lot, why are you doing an MBA? You work for yourself. And at the start, I was like, oh, why? Oh, you know, like put that seed, like that seed of doubt, like in me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go back and think about that. And then the more I thought about it, why do we upgrade our home? Why do we buy a new car? Why do we buy a new pair of shoes? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? Why do we go to this restaurant? But yet it's questioned when you want to self-develop education and knowledge because you're self-employed or because you're not in the field that will require that. It's kind of
It's not a prerequisite.
Yeah. And it's like, I want to upgrade my brain a little bit, what sits in here. So I think that's why to begin with, and then you know, all the added features that come with it.
Do you think the way you run your business now is different because of the MBA that you studied? Because of what you learned there?
Yeah, you know, I think it would have been maybe 6 months into it and having a client meeting, you know, you go see an accountant for accounting stuff. It's kind of shifted towards that business development and strategy from a 360 view. And I have felt at that point, that was only 6 months in without even finishing, I had that self-confidence to advise on that because, you know, I've been learning about it and applying those frameworks. So that's shifted already from a serviceability point of view. But you know, within the MBA that I did, you've got your core requisites, like the subjects you have to do, and they're all those specific, you know, the analytical, economics, what else? Can't remember the other ones. Then you got your sort of soft skill subjects, which become your electives, if you like, as well. You have more of that. And that's more towards the internal culture and relationships and consumer behavior and that psychology of it as well, and decision making. My answer would be yes. And it started with the service that's provided, but also the internal operations as well.
Yeah.
Workflow processes. I found that was a huge one.
Yeah. How many years has it been that you've been running your business now?
3.
3 years. And what is your proudest achievement, do you think, over those 3 years?
It'll have to be that first hire. It's always that first hire for me. I find, because it's like I'm responsible for this individual that's coming into the organization and teaching them, supporting them, and also receiving that same support, and the accountability to get up, get the work, finish the work. Yeah, I would have to say it's that.
Yeah. It's really, see, it's interesting because it's a personal thing. Like, it's another thing involving a relationship.
Yeah, because it's like this person comes to work. It's like, am I, again, you know, it's like, am I creating a safe enough environment? Have I been attentive enough? I don't think I've spoken to them in detail all day today. You know, we had a quick 10-minute meeting, but it's like, no, should that be half an hour? But then, like, over time, you recognize the potential in that person. It's like, no, this person doesn't need to have me over them every single day. They'll come to me if they need help. But yes, always checking in. The first
and do you think that has to do, did you have, when you were working in other businesses, not for yourself, did you have those sort of relationships with your employers that you think you now, like, that you now have with your employee?
Yes and no. I distinctly remember one accounting firm, and in the interview that I did, when I looked at the accounting firm online, I was like, oh my God, these people are ancient. But the first thing they said to me in the interview was, please ignore the website, we're updating it. And I was like, okay, your offices reflect, it's completely different. And he was a quiet man. He was very quiet, and he was in the interview, but he didn't ask a lot. And I was like, okay, account, like that typical accounting persona, you know, that's what I thought. And he asked me a question. He goes, can you do journals? And I went like, what do you mean, can I do journals? Of course I can do journals. That's what accountants do. He goes, I'm just checking, you know. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was always kind of like, is he testing me? So I was there for 5 years, and the relationship was good. It was a teaching, mentoring relationship from a point of, you know, when you make that mistake, it isn't fix it. It's like, let's play out this mistake. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
What's the client going to say? You know, would you want that? And wasn't something that was, shit, you made a mistake, you feel crap for the rest of the day. It was, let's learn from that and move on. Yeah. So like I would say that was there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how the model, like what models we have on our journeys kind of also dictate how we kind of are on the other side to other people.
Yeah. And the accounting firm before that, I always, every time I'd go into the office, he'd be sitting in his office writing stuff down. He had a notebook, and I'd be like, what's he writing all the time? You know, like, come on. Like,
His shopping list.
Who knows? And like I'd ask, like in one point, I'm like, what do you write in your book? He goes, every day I write the phone calls I take and all that stuff. And I'm like, why don't you just type them up? Because it's not like you're advising like an older person. I know this is so bad, but it's like, you know, we can use computers. I can show you if you need help. But it was like, no, I like to have it in front of me. And I picked up that habit. I have a book every day, take all my appointments down, as in I have my calendar online, but I have this book, every phone call I've taken, writing dot points about that phone call, and I flip it, cross it out when it's done or when it's been relayed, because it goes with me everywhere. So you do pick up those little kind of habits, and then you can flip back to 6 months ago, but like, yep, there's that point that I wrote down.
Keeping it old school. I love it.
You can learn something from everyone. Just pay enough attention. Yeah.
So what does the future hold then, Amela?
Scaling.
Yep.
I would like to continue working within my business, and scaling that to a level that I'm comfortable with from a operating point of view, but also from a life point of view. Ideally, it's looking at having something that can be passed on, whether that's to somebody else or to exit. Like, I don't think I would be able to see myself continuously being involved. I think it's just sort of stepping back after a while, whether that be, you know, in a part-time role or something like that.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today, Amela.
Oh, no worries. You're welcome. Geez, that went really quick.
It goes really quick.
I know. Yeah.
It does.
Thank you.
It's always
for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's always a pleasure to chat to you. I'm sure there will be another installment of the Amela Kmetas story in a couple of years' time. And I look forward to hearing it then. But thanks a lot for today.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for having me. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for listening today. We will chat to you again soon. See you later.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode of the She Will Shine podcast, we invite you to check out shewillshine.com.au. She Will Shine is the essential support network you need to grow a thriving, meaningful business. We can help you grow your network, connect and develop genuine relationships, be supported, and support others in building and growing a successful business on your terms. Say goodbye to working alone and become a member at shewillshine.com.au.